The sun was setting over Singapore as Thomas Chen stood at the window of his penthouse suite. The city skyline glittered before him, but he barely noticed it. His phone sat heavy in his hand, the screen displaying a photo of his 4-year-old daughter, Lily. Her smile looked just like her mother's. Thomas checked his watch. It was just past 7 a.m. in California. Lily would be waking up soon, starting her day without him. Again. He turned away from the window and made a sudden decision. "I'm going home," he announced to the empty room. Within an hour, Thomas had called his executive team, rescheduled 3 days of meetings, and was heading to his private jet. The acquisition deal could wait. For the past 3 years since losing his wife Rebecca to cancer, Thomas had buried himself in work. His tech company had expanded into 15 new countries. His net worth had doubled to nearly $12 billion, and he'd barely seen his daughter grow. On the 14-hour flight back to California, Thomas couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the last video call with Lily. She'd shown him a drawing she'd made at preschool, a stick figure family with just her and Diana, the house manager who'd been taking care of her. There was no figure representing him. "Diana helps me with my teeth and reads me stories and knows where the moon goes in the daytime." Lily had chattered happily. Thomas had hired Diana Williams 5 years ago before Rebecca got sick. She had degrees in early childhood education and had worked as a kindergarten teacher before joining their household staff. After Rebecca passed away, Diana had naturally taken on more responsibilities. With Lily, Thomas had been grateful and relieved that she was there to step in where he couldn't or wouldn't. The thought made him uncomfortable. The plane touched down at a private airfield outside Los Angeles. As his driver loaded his bags into the car, Thomas made another impulsive decision. "Don't call the house," he told the driver. "I want to surprise Lily." The drive to his Malibu estate took almost an hour in morning traffic. Thomas gazed out the window at the California coastline, realizing how much he'd missed home. Singapore, Tokyo, New York. They all blended together after a while. Hotel rooms and conference centers looked the same everywhere. The car pulled through the gates of his property. The sprawling Spanish-style mansion sat on 5 acres overlooking the Pacific. Thomas had bought it when Rebecca was pregnant, imagining weekends playing with their children on the lawn, family dinners on the terrace, holidays filled with laughter. The reality had turned out very differently. "I'll just drop these bags inside, sir," his driver said as they pulled up to the house. "No need. Just leave them here." "I'll have someone get them later," Thomas replied, already stepping out of the car. He wanted to find Lily first. The house seemed quiet as he entered through the side door using his key. Mrs. Patel, the cook, was in the kitchen kneading dough. She nearly dropped the rolling pin when she saw him. "Mr. Chen, we weren't expecting you until Friday." "Change of plans," Thomas said with a small smile. "Where's Lily?" "In the garden with Ms. Williams, sir. They're having breakfast on the terrace." Thomas nodded and made his way through the house. It struck him how little it had changed since Rebecca died. Her collection of pottery still lined the shelves in the living room. The painting she'd loved, an abstract swirl of blues and greens, still hung above the fireplace. He'd been so busy running from his grief that he'd left everything exactly as it was. He heard Lily's laughter before he saw her. The sound stopped him in his tracks. When was the last time he'd heard her laugh like that? He moved quietly toward the French doors leading to the garden terrace. Through the glass, he could see Diana and Lily sitting at the small wrought iron table. Diana was cutting up a pancake into bite-sized pieces while Lily chatted animatedly. The morning sun caught in his daughter's dark curls, Rebecca's curls. Diana said something Thomas couldn't hear, and Lily burst into giggles again. She looked happy, completely unreservedly happy. Thomas pushed open the door and stepped onto the terrace. "Morning," he said softly. Lily's head whipped around, her eyes widening. "Daddy?" she said, as if she couldn't quite believe it was him. "Hi, sweetheart," Thomas said, his throat suddenly tight. Diana stood up quickly, surprise clear on her face. "Mr. Chen? We weren't expecting you until the end of the week." "I finished early," Thomas said, not taking his eyes off Lily. He waited for her to run to him, to jump into his arms the way she used to when she was younger. But she stayed in her seat regarding him with a mixture of confusion and curiosity. "Did you come on an airplane?" Lily asked finally. Thomas nodded. "I did. A very long flight." Diana and I were doing breakfast with shapes, Lily informed him, pointing to her plate. My pancake was a star, but now it's just pieces. I see that, Thomas said, moving closer to the table. That looks delicious. Diana began gathering her things. I'll let you two catch up. Lily, remember we have story time at the library at 11. You don't have to go, Thomas said quickly, then felt embarrassed by his eagerness. I mean, please finish your breakfast. Diana hesitated, then sat back down. Thank you, Mr. Chen. Thomas took the third chair at the table. There was an awkward silence that Diana finally broke. Would you like some coffee, sir? I can ask Mrs. Patel to bring some out. No, I'm fine. Thank you. Thomas reached for one of the strawberries on the serving plate. So, library story time? Every Thursday, Diana explained. Lily loves it, don't you, sweetie? Lily nodded enthusiastically. Miss Pat does all the voices. And last week a real firefighter came with his hat. That sounds wonderful, Thomas said, realizing he had no idea about his daughter's weekly routines. Did she have other activities? Friends' favorite books? The knowledge he'd been missing so much of her life hit him like a physical blow. Do you want to come with us, Daddy? Lily asked, tilting her head to the side. Another gesture that reminded him painfully of Rebecca. I'd love to, Thomas said, meaning it. Diana looked surprised but quickly masked it. That would be lovely. The children would be thrilled to have a guest, especially one who's traveled all over the world. Thomas nodded, watching as Lily went back to eating her pancake pieces. She seemed comfortable with him there, but not overly excited. Like he was a pleasant but infrequent visitor, which he realized with a pang was exactly what he had become. I thought maybe after the library we could do something fun together, Thomas suggested. Whatever you want, Lily. Lily considered this, spearing a piece of pancake with her fork. Can we go feed the ducks? Diana takes me to the park with the big pond sometimes. Absolutely, Thomas agreed, relieved she wanted to spend time with him. Diana has to come too, Lily added firmly. Thomas glanced at Diana, who was studying her coffee cup. Of course, he said. If Diana wants to join us, I'd be happy to, Diana replied, looking up with a small smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. As they finished breakfast, Thomas watched the easy way Diana interacted with Lily, anticipating when she needed her napkin, knowing exactly how she liked her orange juice, no pulp, with a bendy straw, laughing at her 4-year-old jokes. There was genuine affection between them. His daughter trusted this woman completely. Thomas felt a complicated mix of emotions, gratitude that Lily had someone so caring in her life, and a deep sadness that he'd missed so much. The photo calls twice a week, the flying visits between business trips, they hadn't been nearly enough. Later, as Diana took Lily inside to get ready for their day, Thomas remained on the terrace. The house behind him, the ocean before him, he made another decision, one that would change everything. He was staying home, not just for this brief visit but permanently. He would find a way to run his company without constant travel. He would get to know his daughter again. It wouldn't be easy. Lily clearly had a stronger bond with Diana than with him. But he had to try. Rebecca would have wanted him to. More importantly, Lily deserved a father who was present. Thomas took out his phone to call his assistant. As he did, he caught sight of his reflection in the glass doors. For the first time in 3 years, he felt like he was looking at himself again. Not the billionaire tech mogul, not the grieving widower, but Thomas Chen, Lily's father. It was time to come home for good. The trip to the library story time wasn't what Thomas had expected. Sitting cross-legged on a colorful rug surrounded by preschoolers, he felt oddly out of place in his expensive suit. Lily sat confidently in the front row, completely absorbed in the librarian's animated reading, while Thomas hung back with Diana. She loves this part, Diana whispered as the children erupted in giggles at a funny voice the librarian used. Thomas nodded, watching his daughter's face light up. When had she developed this love of stories? He'd sent her books from his travels, of course, but he realized now that he'd never actually sat and read them with her. After the library, they headed to the park to feed the ducks as promised. Thomas had changed into more casual clothes, jeans and a sweater that Diana had told him were in his closet. He couldn't remember the last time he'd worn them. "Watch, Daddy," Lily called, tossing breadcrumbs to a cluster of eager ducks. "Don't throw too many at once or they fight." She's quite the duck expert, Thomas said, standing beside Diana on the path. Diana smiled. We come here at least once a week. She keeps track of them, even named some of the regulars. That one with the green head is Mr. Quacker's, Lily informed him seriously, pointing to a mallard. And the brown one with the spot is Freckles. Thomas laughed, genuinely delighted by his daughter's imagination. How do you tell them apart? You just have to look close, Lily said with a 4-year-old's logic. Diana taught me to notice the little things that make everybody special. Thomas glanced at Diana, who was helping Lily break a piece of bread into smaller chunks. The easy rapport between them was undeniable. This woman knew his daughter in ways he simply didn't. I've made a decision, Thomas said as they walked back to the car later. I'm going to be working from home for a while. Diana looked surprised. That's a big change, sir. Thomas, he corrected her. And yes, it is. But a necessary one. Over the next few days, Thomas tried to settle into a routine at home. He converted one of the guest rooms into a proper office and had video calls with his executive team. He tried to be present for breakfast with Lily each morning, though he often found himself unsure of what to say to his own daughter. On the third day, Thomas came downstairs early. The house was quiet except for soft voices coming from the kitchen. He paused in the doorway, unnoticed by Diana and Lily, who were making breakfast together. Can we make heart pancakes? Lily was asking, standing on a step stool at the counter. We sure can, Diana replied, helping her measure flour into a bowl. But remember what we talked about yesterday. We gotta be patient, Lily recited solemnly. That's right. The best things take time. Thomas watched as Diana guided Lily's small hands, letting her crack an egg into the bowl. When some shell fell in, Diana didn't take over. Instead, she showed Lily how to fish it out with a spoon. It was a small moment, but Thomas felt a strange tightness in his chest. Diana was teaching his daughter how to navigate mistakes with calm patience, something he himself struggled with. Thomas cleared his throat and entered the kitchen. Morning, Daddy. We're making pancakes with shapes, Lily announced. I can see that. Need an extra helper? Diana stepped back. Perfect timing. I need to go over some household accounts. Lily can show you the pancake technique. Before Thomas could protest, Diana had slipped out, leaving him alone with his daughter. He looked at Lily uncertainly. You gotta wash your hands first, she instructed seriously. Thomas smiled and did as he was told. For the next 20 minutes, he followed his daughter's lead, making oddly shaped pancakes and listening to her chatter about preschool and her stuffed animals and a butterfly she'd seen yesterday. By the time Diana returned, father and daughter were laughing together over a particularly lopsided pancake that was supposed to be a star. Well done, Diana said, smiling at the scene. Later that afternoon, Thomas had an important video call with investors. Afterwards, feeling restless, he wandered through the house. From the window of his office, he spotted Diana and Lily in the garden. Curious, he made his way outside. As he approached, he realized they weren't just playing. Diana had spread a blanket on the grass and placed several photo albums around them. Lily was carefully arranging photographs in what looked like a scrapbook. Thomas froze, his breath catching. He recognized the photos. They were of Rebecca, his late wife. Lily was holding one of Rebecca laughing on the beach, her curly hair blowing in the wind. That's my favorite one of Mommy, Lily was saying. She looks so happy. She does, Diana agreed gently. Do you remember that day at the beach? Lily scrunched up her face in concentration. I think so. We built a castle? That's right. A huge one with shells all over it. Thomas couldn't move. Since Rebecca died, he had avoided talking about her. The photos had been packed away in albums stored in the library. He hadn't known Diana had taken them out. He hadn't known she talked to Lily about Rebecca. Diana, Lily's voice grew smaller. Did Mommy like being my mommy? The question hit Thomas like a physical blow. He wanted to rush forward to answer for Diana, but he couldn't make his feet move. Diana placed a gentle hand on Lily's shoulder. Your mommy loved being your mommy more than anything in the whole world. It was her favorite job. More than Daddy likes his job at his company? Diana nodded solemnly. Much, much more. Then why did she go away? Lily's voice wobbled slightly. Thomas felt tears burning his eyes. This was the conversation he'd been afraid to have, the question he'd dreaded. Diana took both of Lily's hands in hers. Your mommy didn't want to go away, sweetheart. Remember how we talked about being sick? Your mommy had a very serious sickness called cancer. The doctors tried very hard to make her better, but sometimes even doctors can't fix everything. Lily nodded slowly. And now she's a star. The brightest one. That's right, Diana said softly. And she watches over you every single day. Does she watch Daddy too? Of course she does. She loves you both very much. Thomas stepped forward then, unable to stay silent any longer. The movement caught their attention and both Diana and Lily turned toward him. He saw Diana's expression shift from surprise to concern. Mr. Chen, I was going to discuss this with you first. But Lily asked about the photos yesterday, and I thought. Thomas raised a hand to stop her apology. It's fine, he managed to say, though his voice sounded strange even to his own ears. He moved closer and knelt on the edge of the blanket. What are you working on, Lily? A memory book, Lily explained, showing him the partially completed scrapbook. For Mommy. Thomas gently touched one of the photos, Rebecca holding newborn Lily in the hospital. This is a wonderful idea. Would you like to join us? Diana asked cautiously. Thomas nodded, not trusting himself to speak again just yet. He settled onto the blanket across from them. For the next hour, the three of them sorted through photographs. Slowly, Thomas began to share stories about Rebecca, silly ones that made Lily giggle, romantic ones that made her say, you, meaningful ones that he realized he'd been keeping locked inside for too long. As the afternoon light began to fade, Thomas looked up to find Diana watching him with a soft expression he couldn't quite read. You tell good stories about Mommy, Lily said, leaning against his arm. I have a lot of them, Thomas replied. I should have shared them with you before. It's never too late to start, Diana said quietly. Later, after Lily had gone to bed, Thomas found Diana in the kitchen making tea. He stood in the doorway, uncertain of what to say. Thank you, he finally managed, for doing what I couldn't. Diana turned to face him. She needs to know her mother. Those memories are precious, Mr. Chen. Thomas, he reminded her. And yes, they are. It hurt too much. I understand, Diana said. Grief isn't linear. Everyone processes it differently. Thomas nodded, realizing that this woman not only cared for his daughter, but understood him in a way few people did. He had been so focused on escaping his pain that he'd left Lily alone with hers. But Diana had stepped in, bridging the gap he'd created. Would you like some tea? Diana offered, gesturing to the kettle. I would, Thomas said, making another small decision to stay rather than retreat to his office. And maybe you could tell me more about Lily's routines. I have a lot to catch up on, Diana smiled. I'd be happy to. As they sat at the kitchen counter with their tea, Thomas felt something shift inside him, a door long closed beginning, finally to crack open. A week after his unexpected return, Thomas woke before sunrise. Sleep had become elusive as memories of Rebecca and thoughts of Lily filled his mind each night. He slipped out of bed and wandered downstairs, surprised to find lights already on in the kitchen. Diana sat at the counter with paperwork spread before her, a cup of tea steaming beside her. She looked up, startled when he appeared in the doorway. Mr. Chen, Thomas, you're up early. So are you, he noted, moving to the coffee maker. Do you always start work at 5 in the morning? Diana gathered her papers. It's the quietest time. I like to get the household accounts and scheduling done before Lily wakes up. Thomas glanced at the papers as he prepared his coffee. They weren't just bills and schedules. He spotted what looked like course descriptions from a local university. Are you taking classes? He asked. Diana hesitated before answering. I've been working on my master's degree in child psychology. Online courses mostly. I can fit them in during nap times and evenings. Thomas felt a twinge of guilt. He'd had no idea Diana was pursuing further education. That sounds demanding. On top of everything else you do here. It's worth it, she said simply. I've always wanted to finish my degree. Thomas sat across from her, cradling his coffee mug. Why child psychology? I started as a teacher, as you know, but after working with Lily and seeing her process grief at such a young age, Diana trailed off, then met his eyes directly. Children experience loss differently than adults. I wanted to understand better how to help them. Thomas swallowed hard. You've helped Lily more than I have. That's not fair to yourself, Diana replied. Grief affects everyone differently. Being sad doesn't excuse being absent, Thomas said, voicing the thought that had been haunting him. I've missed so much. "You're here now," Diana said softly. "That's what matters to Lily." They sat in companionable silence for a moment before Thomas spoke again. "Tell me something I don't know about my daughter." Diana smiled. "She hates having her hair washed but loves bubble baths. She collects rocks and keeps them in a special box under her bed. She thinks the moon follows our car whenever we drive at night. She always gives the last bite of dessert to her stuffed elephant, Charlie." Thomas listened, storing away each detail like precious gems. "What else?"
"She asks about you every day when you're gone," Diana said more quietly.
"Wants to know where exactly you are in the world, what you're doing. We have a map in her room with little pins marking all your business trips." Thomas felt his throat tighten. "I didn't know that. She's very proud of you. Tells everyone at preschool her daddy builds computers that help people talk to each other all over the world." Thomas let out a shaky breath. "I need to do better by her." "You will," Diana said with surprising certainty. Later that day, after dropping Lily at preschool, Thomas asked Diana to join him in his home office. He'd been thinking all morning about their dawn conversation. "I'd like to understand more about what you do here," he said as they settled into chairs. "Obviously far more than what your job description outlined." Diana folded her hands in her lap. After Mrs. Chen passed away, things evolved naturally. Lily needed consistency, routine, emotional support. You were dealing with your own grief while trying to keep the company running. I simply stepped in where needed. "You became her parent," Thomas said bluntly. Diana looked startled. "No, It's not an accusation," Thomas clarified. "It's an observation. And I'm grateful. But I need to understand what I've missed, what she needs that I haven't been providing." Diana considered this for a long moment. Children need to feel secure, especially after trauma. Lily needed to know that even though her mother was gone, she wasn't going to lose anyone else. "Every time you leave for weeks at a time, she worries I won't come back," Thomas finished, the realization hitting him hard. Diana nodded. "She doesn't say it directly, but yes. And she needs consistency. Regular bedtimes, meals together. Someone to listen to the little things that happen in her day that seem enormous in her world. Like the rocks under her bed," Thomas murmured. "Exactly. Each one has a story, a memory attached to it." Thomas leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. "I've been so focused on providing for her future that I've missed her present." "Financial security is important," Diana acknowledged. But she needs more than money. She needs me." Thomas stood and walked to the window, looking out at the garden where just days ago he'd found Diana and Lily with the photo albums. "Tell me about yourself, Diana. How did you end up here, raising another person's child?" If Diana was offended by his bluntness, she didn't show it. "I was a kindergarten teacher for 6 years, loved it. Then my mother got sick, Alzheimer's. I moved back home to care for her. After she passed, I needed a job with living accommodations. Your wife's posting for a house manager with childcare experience seemed perfect." "And then history repeated itself," Thomas said. "You ended up caring for someone else who needed you." "It's different," Diana insisted. "I love working with Lily, but I've always been clear with her that I'm not her mother. I'm here to support both of you." Thomas turned back to face her. "Why did you take out those photo albums?" "The ones of Rebecca." Diana met his gaze steadily. "Because Lily deserves to know her mother. Because memories matter, and because grief shouldn't mean erasure." The words hit Thomas like physical blows. How many times over the past 3 years had he changed the subject when Lily mentioned her mother? How many times had he put away photos because they hurt too much to look at? "You're right," he admitted. "I've been selfish in my grief." "No," Diana said firmly. "You've been human. There's a difference." That evening, Thomas made a point of being home for dinner. Afterward, instead of retreating to his office as he had most evenings that week, he asked Lily to show him her rock collection. His daughter's face lit up. She led him upstairs to her room, dropping to her knees to pull a shoebox from under her bed. Thomas sat on the floor beside her as she removed the lid with ceremonial care. "This one's from the beach," Lily explained, holding up a smooth white stone. "And this one Diana found in the garden. It's shaped like a heart, see?" Thomas examined each rock as if it were a rare jewel, listening as his daughter explained where each came from and why it was special. He realized Diana had been right. Each small stone represented a moment, a memory, a piece of Lily's life he'd missed. "Daddy?" Lily's voice pulled him from his thoughts. "Yes, sweetheart. Are you going away again soon?" Her small face was serious, her eyes, Rebecca's eyes, watching him carefully. Thomas shook his head. No, I'm staying home for a long time. Lily considered this. But what about your important meetings? I can do a lot of them on the computer, Thomas explained. And some things are more important than meetings. Like what? Like rock collections, Thomas said, smiling at her. Like feeding ducks and making pancakes and bedtime stories. Like me? Lily asked, her voice small but hopeful. Especially like you. Thomas confirmed, opening his arms. This time Lily didn't hesitate. She crawled into his lap, her small arms wrapping around his neck. Over her head, Thomas saw Diana standing in the doorway, a soft smile on her face. She gave him a small nod before quietly slipping away, leaving father and daughter to their moment. Later, after Lily was asleep, Thomas found Diana in the living room with her laptop and textbooks. Studying? He asked. She nodded. Midterm coming up next week. I've been thinking, Thomas said, sitting across from her. Your master's program, is it something you'd want to pursue full-time? Diana looked surprised. Eventually, maybe. But right now, with Lily, what if we figured out a way for you to do both? Thomas interrupted. I want to be more present for Lily. That means I need to step up as her father. But she still needs you. We both do. What are you suggesting? Diana asked cautiously. A new arrangement, Thomas said. One that gives you time for your studies and career goals while keeping you in our lives. And one that helps me become the father Lily deserves. Diana closed her laptop. That sounds complicated. Life is complicated, Thomas said with a small smile. But I think we can figure it out. Together. The word hung in the air between them, full of possibilities neither of them was ready to name. But for the first time since returning home, Thomas felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. The morning sun streamed through the kitchen windows as Thomas flipped pancakes while Lily watched, perched on her step stool. 2 weeks had passed since his late-night conversation with Diana about creating a new arrangement. In those 2 weeks, he'd made more changes to his life than in the 3 years since Rebecca died. You're getting really good at pancakes. Daddy? Lily observed as Thomas perfectly executed a flip. I have an excellent teacher, Thomas replied, winking at his daughter. Diana entered the kitchen, dressed for her Monday morning class at the university. Thomas had rearranged his schedule to be home with Lily during Diana's classes, a small but significant step in their new arrangement. Pancakes again? Diana asked with a smile. You two are becoming pancake experts. It's the only thing I can cook without setting off the smoke alarm, Thomas admitted. We're going to try waffles next, Lily informed Diana seriously. After Daddy takes me to school and you finish your big test. It's not a test, just a lecture, Diana corrected gently, accepting the travel mug of coffee Thomas handed her. But I appreciate the good luck wishes. As Diana gathered her books, Thomas noticed the dark circles under her eyes. Were you up late studying again? He asked quietly, while Lily was distracted arranging fruit on her plate. Diana nodded. The midterm paper is due Friday. I'll be fine, Thomas frowned. You're pushing yourself too hard, says the man who once did 3 international conference calls during a 5-hour flight, Diana replied with a raised eyebrow. Thomas laughed. Fair point. But seriously, if you need more time for your coursework, we'll figure it out, Diana assured him, using the phrase that had become something of a motto between them over the past 2 weeks. That's what the schedule on the refrigerator is for. The schedule had been Diana's idea, a color-coded system that ensured Lily had consistency while allowing both adults to meet their responsibilities. Green blocks were Diana's university time. Blue blocks were Thomas's unavoidable work commitments, and yellow blocks were designated family time when all 3 of them did something together. Don't forget we have dinner with your board members tonight, Diana reminded him as she headed for the door. Thomas groaned. Do I have to go? You're the boss, Diana pointed out. And you promised to introduce the new parental leave policy. Right. Thomas had spent the past week revamping his company's benefits, starting with expanded leave for new parents. It was one of many changes he'd begun implementing after realizing how his own workaholic tendencies affected not just his family, but thousands of employees and their families too. Mrs. Patel will watch. Lily, and I'll join you there after my evening class. Diana continued. "The blue suit is back from the dry cleaners." After Diana left, Thomas helped Lily finish her breakfast before getting her ready for preschool. These morning routines, once entirely handled by Diana, had become precious to him. He learned something new about his daughter every day, how she insisted on wearing mismatched socks for good luck, how she named her stuffed animals after characters in her favorite books, how she hummed to herself when concentrating on a task. That evening, Thomas adjusted his tie in the mirror, thinking about how differently this night would have gone just a month ago. Before his impromptu return home, he would have arrived at the restaurant directly from the office, stayed too late drinking with board members, and missed saying goodnight to Lily. Now, he'd already had dinner with his daughter, read her a bedtime story, and promised to tell her all about the grown-up party in the morning. The restaurant was one of the most exclusive in Los Angeles, with views overlooking the city. Thomas arrived to find most of his board members already seated at the private dining room. "The prodigal CEO returns," joked Harold Bennett, the oldest board member and one of Thomas's earliest investors. "We were starting to think you'd abandoned ship." Thomas shook hands around the table. "Not abandoned, just steering from a different location." "Your home office setup working out?" asked Vivian Wu, head of global operations. "Better than expected," Thomas replied as they all took their seats. "Technology makes physical location increasingly irrelevant." "Not entirely irrelevant," countered Peter Reynolds, eyeing Thomas over his whiskey glass. "The Singapore deal nearly fell apart when you canceled your trip." Thomas nodded, acknowledging the point. "True, and that's why David flew out to handle it in person." He nodded toward his newly promoted COO, who raised his glass in response. "Delegation. It's a skill I'm finally learning." The conversation flowed through appetizers and main courses, touching on quarterly projections, the new product launch, and Thomas's proposed policy changes. To his surprise, the board was largely supportive of the expanded parental leave. "About time," Vivian said approvingly. "We've lost too many talented women after they had children. This gives them a reason to come back." "It's not just for mothers," Thomas emphasized. "All parents deserve time with their children." Harold studied him curiously. "You've changed, Thomas. A month ago, you were pushing for the Singapore expansion to be completed by year's end, no matter the cost. Now you're talking about work-life balance and family time." Thomas took a sip of his water, considering his response. Priorities shift. Sometimes it takes coming home unexpectedly to realize what matters. The private dining room door opened and Diana entered. She'd come straight from her evening class, dressed in a simple blue dress that Thomas had never seen before. She'd mentioned buying something new for the occasion, wanting to look professional when meeting the board members. "Sorry I'm late," she apologized. "The professor went over time." Thomas stood to greet her. "Everyone, this is Diana Williams. She's been invaluable in helping me restructure my schedule and, frankly, my priorities. She's also pursuing her master's in child psychology." As Diana took the empty seat beside him, Thomas noticed several board members exchanging glances. Harold's eyebrows had shot up while Vivian was studying Diana with interest. "So you're the reason our workaholic CEO suddenly remembers he has a home," Peter said, his tone hard to read. Diana met his gaze calmly. "Mr. Chen made that decision himself. I simply help with Lily's schedule." "Diana has been my daughter's rock since her mother died," Thomas added, feeling a protective instinct rise. "She's part of our family." The phrase hung in the air, carrying more weight than Thomas had intended. He felt Diana's surprised glance but kept his focus on the board members. Vivian broke the silence. "Well, Diana, I'd love to hear more about your studies. My foundation funds several initiatives in early childhood development." As dinner progressed, Diana handled herself with grace, discussing her coursework and research interests. Thomas watched with growing admiration as she held her own with some of the sharpest business minds in the country. By dessert, even Peter was engaged in conversation with her about the psychological impact of technology on child development. The evening wound down, and as board members began saying their goodbyes, Harold pulled Thomas aside. "She's remarkable," the older man said quietly, nodding toward Diana, who was exchanging contact information with Vivian. "She is," Thomas agreed. "Reminds me a bit of Rebecca," Harold continued. "Not in looks, but in spirit. That same quiet confidence." Thomas felt a pang at the mention of his late wife but nodded. They would have liked each other. Harold gave him a knowing look. "Just be careful, Thomas. Board members gossip. Some might misinterpret your family arrangement. Let them, Thomas said, surprising himself with the firmness in his voice. Diana has been there for my daughter when I wasn't. What's between us is between us. On the drive home, Diana was quiet, looking out at the city lights. You were a hit, Thomas said, breaking the silence. Vivian wants you to consult on her foundation's new initiative. She's very impressive, Diana replied. They all are. I felt a bit out of my depth. You didn't show it, Thomas assured her. If anything, you impressed them more than I have lately. Diana turned to look at him. Did you mean what you said? About me being part of your family? Thomas kept his eyes on the road, his hands tightening slightly on the steering wheel. Yes, he said simply. You are. They drove in silence for another moment before Diana spoke again. This arrangement we're creating, it's uncharted territory. People will talk. Let them. Thomas repeated his words from earlier. All that matters is what works for Lily, and for us. The us hung between them, undefined yet undeniable. As they pulled into the driveway of the house they shared, not as employer and employee, not quite as equals, but as something new they were still figuring out. Thomas realized how much had changed in just a few short weeks, and how much more might change in the weeks to come. 6 months had passed since Thomas's unexpected return home. The garden behind the Malibu house was transformed for the day, with white chairs arranged in neat rows and fairy lights strung between the trees. A small podium stood at the front, decorated with wildflowers, Rebecca's favorite. Thomas adjusted his tie as he looked out the window at the gathering guests. Today marked the launch of the Rebecca Chen Foundation, created to support children who had lost parents to cancer. The foundation had been Thomas's idea, but Diana had shaped its mission and programs. Daddy, is it time yet? Lily bounced into his room, wearing a new purple dress with butterflies embroidered on the hem. At 4.5, she seemed to grow more like Rebecca every day, not just in her curls and smile, but in her spirited determination. Almost, sweetheart. You look beautiful. Thomas knelt to straighten the little cardigan Diana had insisted Lily wear against the ocean breeze. Remember what you're going to do today? Lily nodded solemnly. I'm going to help you and Diana give out the flowers to the kids who miss their mommies or daddies. Like I miss Mommy. Thomas felt the familiar tightness in his throat that came whenever Lily spoke of Rebecca with such simple clarity. That's right. And how do you feel about that? It was a question Diana had taught him to ask, part of helping Lily identify and express her emotions, something Thomas himself was still learning to do. Happy and a little bit sad. Lily answered thoughtfully. Diana says that's okay. Diana is very wise, Thomas agreed, standing as he heard a knock at the door. Diana entered, dressed in a simple blue suit. She'd cut her hair shorter recently, a change that somehow made her look both more professional and more approachable. She'd graduated with her master's degree last month, finishing at the top of her class despite the demands of her unique living situation. The guests are arriving, she told them. And the first families from the children's program are here too. Thomas nodded, feeling suddenly nervous. Public speaking had never bothered him in business settings, but today felt different. More personal. More important. You'll do great, Diana assured him, reading his expression with the ease that still sometimes startled him. Just speak from your heart like we practiced. The three of them made their way downstairs and out to the garden. Thomas recognized faces as they walked toward the front. Board members from his company, Diana's professors, parents from Lily's school, and most importantly, the 20 families who would be the first beneficiaries of the foundation's programs. As Thomas took his place at the podium, he looked out at the gathered crowd. 6 months ago, he couldn't have imagined this scene. Himself standing confidently as both CEO and father, Diana beside him as both colleague and family, Lily between them, holding both their hands. Thank you all for coming today, Thomas began. 3 years ago, I lost my wife Rebecca to cancer. She was brilliant, kind, and the best mother our daughter could have asked for. When she died, I thought the best thing I could do for our daughter was to secure her future financially. I buried myself in work, expanding my company across continents while my child grew up without me. Thomas paused, looking down at Lily, who was watching him intently. What I didn't understand then was that presence matters more than provision. That memories matter more than money. That grief shouldn't be faced alone. He glanced at Diana, whose eyes were steady and encouraging. I was fortunate that Diana Williams came into our lives. She kept Rebecca's memory alive for my daughter when I couldn't bear to. She created stability when I was absent. She built bridges I'm still learning to cross. In the audience, Thomas saw Harold nodding approvingly, while Vivian discreetly wiped away a tear. The Rebecca Chen Foundation was born from our shared experience. Its mission is to support children who have lost parents, not just financially but emotionally. Our programs include grief counseling, memory-keeping workshops, and parent-child bonding experiences for the surviving parent. We've also established a scholarship fund for students pursuing degrees in child psychology, like Diana has done. As Thomas continued outlining the Foundation's work, he watched the faces of the families they would be helping, saw the recognition, the relief of being understood. One mother, there with twin boys about Lily's age, was nodding as tears streamed down her face. Loss changes us, Thomas continued, but it doesn't have to define us. Rebecca believed that family comes in many forms and love grows in unexpected places. He looked at Diana and Lily, standing just to his side. I've learned that lesson slowly but thoroughly. When the formal presentation ended, the real purpose of the day began. Thomas, Diana, and Lily moved among the children who had lost parents, giving each one a small wooden box containing a seedling tree and a journal for recording memories. The tree grows as you grow, Lily explained seriously to a small boy clutching his box. And you can write about your mommy or daddy in the book. That's what I do. Thomas watched his daughter with pride, amazed at her resilience and compassion. Diana stood nearby, helping another child understand how to care for the seedling. They caught each other's eyes over the children's heads, sharing a silent moment of connection. Later, as the event wound down and the last guest departed, Thomas found Diana sitting alone on the bench beneath the old oak tree, the spot where he'd first found her with Lily, and the photo albums, all those months ago. You did wonderfully today, Diana said as he sat beside her. Rebecca would be proud. Of all of us, Thomas added. This foundation, it's the three of us, isn't it? You, me, and Lily building something to honor Rebecca. Diana nodded, looking out at the ocean visible beyond the property. I've been thinking about what happens next. Thomas felt a flicker of alarm. What do you mean? My degree is finished. The foundation is launched. Lily is thriving with you back in her life. Diana turned to face him. The arrangement we made 6 months ago was about transition, helping you become the father Lily needs while giving me space to pursue my goals. Maybe it's time for me to step back. The thought of Diana leaving sent a cold wave through Thomas's chest. Is that what you want? Diana was quiet for a long moment. I love Lily. These years with her have been the most meaningful of my life, and working with you on the foundation has shown me what I want to do with my degree. She hesitated, but living in this in-between space, not quite family, not quite employee, it's getting complicated. Thomas understood what she wasn't saying. Over the past 6 months, their relationship had evolved beyond employer and employee, beyond co-parents into something neither of them had named but both felt. The careful boundaries they'd established had blurred as they worked side by side on the foundation, as they shared meals and movie nights with Lily, as they gradually became a unit. What if it wasn't in between? Thomas asked quietly. What if it was just ours, this life we've built? Diana looked at him, her expression cautious but hopeful. That's a big step, Thomas. I know. Thomas took her hand, a gesture that had become familiar between them. I'm not asking because I need help with Lily anymore. I'm asking because this house feels like a home when you're in it. Because Lily lights up around you in a way that honors her mother's memory, rather than replacing it. Because I've learned more about being a good person from watching you these past 6 months than I learned in 40 years of life before. People will talk, Diana said. Echoing her words from months ago, Thomas smiled. Let them. All that matters is what works for us. And for Lily, Diana added. Always for Lily, Thomas agreed. They sat together as twilight fell, watching as Lily played with her stuffed elephant on the lawn, surrounded by the remnants of the day's celebration. The foundation bearing Rebecca's name had launched successfully. Lily was thriving, and the future, which had once seemed so hollow after Rebecca's death, now felt full of possibility. I'd like to stay, Diana said finally, her voice soft but certain. Then stay, Thomas replied. Not as my employee, not as Lily's caretaker, but as yourself. as part of whatever this family is becoming. As if sensing the significance of the moment, Lily ran over to them, climbing up to sit between them on the bench. "Are we having a family meeting?" she asked. Thomas and Diana exchanged a look over her head, a look full of shared history, mutual respect, and the quiet understanding that sometimes families form in the most unexpected ways. "Yes," Thomas told his daughter, putting his arm around both her and Diana. "I think we are.